Hi, this is Jason Montag with #Midwest. Today, Patrick Gaynor and I speak to Omar Shaikh. Now, my guess is if you've lived in southeastern Wisconsin for any length of time, you have heard his name. He's owned a number of restaurants, the award-winning steakhouse Carnevor downtown. He was part of the group that redeveloped the Grand Avenue Mall into what is now the awesome 3rd Street Market Hall. He worked as the board chair for VISIT Milwaukee. He's also helped with the recently announced Convention Center expansion, essentially doubling the space for our convention center. And Omar is now the coalition chair for the Home Crew Coalition, which is coming together to figure out a way to get this Brewers ballpark deal done and make sure that then we keep the Brewers right here in southeastern Wisconsin where they belong. So today was a fun one. Absolutely had a great conversation. We talked about all these things and a lot more. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Executive Stories here on #Midwest. I'm joined by Patrick Gaynor as always. Neil is actually on a little bit of a hiatus here, but we're joined by a special guest, Omar Shaikh. And welcome.
Good to be here. Yeah. Grew up in Brown Deer. Good family. Have 2 sisters. My dad was one of the deans of engineering at UWM.
Okay.
Also a professor, and my mom worked for the Covenant Library System. So we had a great, family dynamic. And then when I was 18, I steered off the track a little bit, right? And so I moved out to Los Angeles just to kind of do my own thing. And my dream was to learn martial arts and, be a fighter and things of that nature. And so did pretty good. At the time, the sport wasn't paying a lot. And so, it just sucked coming back for Christmas all the time when my sister, one is a doctor, the other's a doctor, and I have cousins that are doctors, lawyers, and I was a fighter, right? And so I wasn't making a lot of money too and getting my teeth knocked out. So came back here from California, graduated from Cardinal Stritch.
Okay.
Sad news about them recently. Yeah, really sad for the community. A lot of great people over there. But it's you've got to adapt, right? And so,
right. We'll talk about that too, because that's an interesting one to talk about, especially in the Midwest. Some of these, smaller institutions like that, and the challenges that they're going through, and be interested to hear what you have to say about that. But so one question I didn't hear last time that I didn't realize your dad was a professor. Mm-hmm. So at 18, my assumption would be everyone in the family is going to college, or over on my dead body, you're going to go be a fighter. So how'd that go? How'd that conversation happen?
Didn't go well. I mean, I chased dreams, and I got about 2 years of schooling done in about 8 years in California. Had a lot of fun and did a lot of things, but I took training very seriously. And so, no, it was a tough time for our family dynamic. I was probably the only one that didn't graduate, right, from our family tree with a college degree.
Right,
that was always never a question. And I'll just tell you the truth. Like my sisters, one I think was salutatorian, the other graduated as chief resident. Like they are brilliant, and my family's a brilliant type. And I never was the smartest one. I was always the dumbest one for sure. And it's just funny. I mean, it's like even my daughter, my middle daughter, my kids all get great grades. But my middle daughter's exceptionally brilliant. 4.3, 4.4, I think, with all AP classes.
Yeah.
And I don't know where she got it. She wasn't for me. Definitely from the family side
So
of
is
things,
that, I know it's, by the way, it's likely a mixture of great IQ and all that, but is it also the work ethic portion of it? Or would you say, no, you've got the work ethic. It's just different between you and your siblings?
Different. Yeah, it's different.
Just different.
It's just different. I mean, I had to work really hard to get the grades I got. That kept me in the house, and they, of course they put the effort in, right? But they were brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So you're out in, we talked a little bit about this previously, but, so you're out in LA, and you were actually training with the Gracies, which is a really, really, world famous, coaches essentially that they sort of developed and invented this whole thing. Right. Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about that. Cause I mean, which Gracie were you working? I
started, so Horion, it was Horion's Academy, and Hoist Gracie was one of the head coaches. So
is that right?
Hoist was the coach. Horion, my first private lessons ever with free 30-minute was with Hickson Gracie, who's like the godfather of jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Like, you hear about him, and he would go train with world champions and they'd come back and be like, take off my black belt or give me a white belt or a blue belt. Like he's godlike in our industry, which is really cool though. Cause the other day I got to meet a guy I trained with when he was 17 in the Torrance Academy, and he remembered me. I reached out to him and his team because he had a pro boxing match here. It was like a celebrity boxing. And his name was Vitor Belfort.
Vitor Belfort.
Vitor, like the phenom.
Oh, that's incredible.
He remembered me from training.
Really?
30 years ago. Cool. And so he came into Carnevor and couldn't eat. He had some of his team. We hit it off. And so now I'm going to go visit him down in Florida. And he's what a great guy, you know, and he's like, hey, we'll train. I'm like, hey, no, we're not going to train. It's all good, man. Right. You know, I'll come down and visit you. Yeah. Our families got together the day after the fights and we hung out for several hours. It was really cool, man. He was one of the greatest of all time.
Now that boxing thing, that's awesome. That's incredible that you were back there at that time, by the way. And I know the early days of UFC, that was the Hoist Gracie show. I mean, he won the first few of those. Did he not? Or maybe the first one, but he
first few. First 2 or 3.
Yeah. Was that roughly the time you were out there training with those? Oh man, that had to be incredible.
It was. It was.
So this is probably an important thing to establish some attributes, which I think are probably going to pay off later in your career. But like when you graduated high school, you're like, I really need to go to LA and train with these guys, or was LA just kind of like, well, I'm going to go there and then figure it out?
No, I didn't even know about it, to tell you the truth. I went out there just to kind of get away. Started hanging out with the wrong people, and my parents are like, okay, you're on your own. Go figure it out, right? I went out and stayed with a distant relative to start. And then moved out on my own. But it just so happened I lived within like 9 blocks of the first Gracie Academy ever. So I walked in and I was like, what is this stuff? Like, you see these guys.
So you didn't move out there with an idea of like, I want to be a fighter.
Well, I did. I knew I wanted to train martial arts. And I'll just be honest, like my parents don't believe in violence or that type of competitive sport. And so they never allowed me to do it, even though I wanted to do it. So my goal was to move out there and train in some form.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Incredible. And at that time, because it wasn't super popular, you were sort of innovative in that sense. I mean, you know, doing something that's brand new, essentially brand new, and going out there to train. So how long were you out there now?
8 years.
For 8 years.
Yeah. Between 7 and 8 years. So I trained with them, and then I brought it back here, and I partnered with a guy named Adrian Serrano, who was an Olympic judo alternate, world sambo champion, really tough guy, like legend of MMA, fought in the UFC, the whole works, and taught his jiu-jitsu classes and continued to train for a long time.
By the way, the boxing thing you mentioned with Vitor, that's a promotion put on by one of the, who's the promoter of that one? It's like a new...
Jorge Masvidal.
Masvidal, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. He just had his last fight.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
Yeah.
And he retired. Yep.
Yeah.
But was it a good promotion? I mean, did they do a good job?
I thought they did.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it was long, right? But I thought they did a pretty good job. I think there were at least 6,000 people there, which was not bad, right?
Yeah.
I had dinner the week before with Peter Fagan, who's the president of the Bucks, and he was pretty excited about it because he's like, I hope this works. This is something new. It's exciting. And so hopefully they bring other shows here.
Yeah, give it a shot. So just talking about jiu-jitsu a little bit, because it does strike me as a discipline that you just seem to carry yourself with this sort of discipline, right? I mean, I've known you a tiny bit over just a few weeks, right? But tell me a little bit about that as a martial art and the discipline, and what do you think you learned from that you brought back to just working?
I mean, I think everything. I mean, like today is a different type of fight, right? Because it's constantly, whether it be political or whether it be competitive, like, you know, with competitors in our business or whatever else, it seems like everything's a fight these days, right? And it's not as easy as just like settling it by going in a cage and somebody wins and somebody loses. So
right.
No, but it teaches you to dig deep, like nothing other, right? The training and the day in and day out preparation for a fight and the weight cuts and just getting up at a time to run 5 miles before you start training. It sucks. Like you just don't want to do it, but you're constantly doing things that you don't want to do. And that's really where the discipline comes in. And that's how we've all succeeded. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you have to learn to appreciate the grind.
Yeah.
Like that's almost like, like if you can't get into the routine of the grind, like you'll never really get it.
And that's why there's a lot of great competitors and fighters out there. That's why they dip out. They just can't do it. And that, I mean, and also you're training a lot. You're tired, you're injured. Every fight you're going, if you're training hard, you're injured, right? Almost everyone. And then you're cutting weight on top of it. You're starving.
Yeah. Right?
That's got to You're just not a great person to be around the last 2-3 days before a fight.
Yeah. So one of the things, I mean, by the way, Patrick and I are in the technology world and write software and things like that. It's interesting. One of the concepts we use is something called a coding dojo or software development dojos, which is essentially just a martial art term. The idea is, how can you practice your craft deliberately, right? And how do you put energy and focus into that and be professional, right? You can't just show up, right? You got to actually put in the work.
Yeah.
I feel like, martial arts in some sense, and probably jiu-jitsu, and as far as I have seen, seems like it's one of those where, in the Gracie style of jiu-jitsu, it's like, no, you're always getting better. You have to get better, and there isn't an end. It's just constant, right?
I mean, and there's constant failure too.
Right,
you're getting humbled all the time. You have great days in the gym, and then a guy who's not supposed to floors you, right? So it's like it teaches true grit and the true grind and digging deep to just continue to move forward. And that's what we have to do as entrepreneurs.
Right. Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about that. So you came back after 8 years, and so now you're a young adult and
26, 27,
a couple fewer teeth, right, or whatever. You've had a fight career. What precipitated the move back?
I was competing, but back then, my first fight, I think I made $75 to show and $75 to win in the back of a bowling alley. By the time I was like, my biggest paychecks were like $1,000 to show and whatnot. And so it's like, you just realize that you can't do that for a living until the sport really grows. And still, even most 99% of fighters can't really do it for a living.
Yeah.
Only the superstars that get a percentage of the pay-per-view and all that. And so I for my time, I was good. I competed in Abu Dhabi trials. I think that's one of 8 Americans that were selected to compete in that jiu-jitsu wise, no gi. And so I got smoked, but I didn't have the athleticism to be one of the great stars in MMA. Like, you just can't, unless, you have to be, the work ethic was there, but you also need the physical attributes and it's just what it is.
It's professional athletics, right? Sometimes it's hard work, and sometimes it's like you just happen to be born in a body that nobody else has, right?
The closer you get to that end of the standard deviation, the more people have, well, not only do they work as hard as you, but they also have all of the physical bits. They're just a bit faster.
And then wrestlers started to enter our sport, and wrestling is one of the most gritty, the toughest sports in the world.
Yep.
If you've ever wrestled, you'll understand, right? And so then you're getting high caliber state champion, national champion, and then some Olympians started to come in the sport, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's going to drop an elbow on my face, like full force.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things that, for Hashtag Midwest, Travis Diener's one of the people that we have a show on a different podcast. But one of the things that's so impressive to me are people that can actually get to that level with very few physical gifts, right?
Yeah.
I look at him as somebody like that, but I know lots of these people. It's just, what drives somebody that is, but look, it's not like he's not an athletic guy, clearly very athletic, but compared to most of these guys, nothing like them. So what do you make of that? In terms of,
remember, it's a different sport though. So, when you're separated by pure athleticism, you can get really hurt in our sport. You're not getting dunked on, or you're not getting, crossed over, falling off. You're getting like knees to the face and elbows to the face from the ground. Like, so those, work ethic is great, but it's a dangerous sport.
Yeah, of course. Right. But I look at football, pro football, pro basketball. It's like these two sports where, I'm sorry, you just have to be a bigger person. You got to be a physical
you have to have
specimen.
The attributes.
Right. Yeah. And it's just interesting to see people that make it into those domains. It's like, what the heck did they do that was so different? So, well, interesting. So now you're back, and what did you move back for when you were? Did you have a job here?
I came back here, and I knew I needed to finish school. I got 2 years of school done there in the 8 years, and so graduated from Cardinal Stretch, business degree. Had great experience there. That's where I met my wife. Like, a lot of my closest friends that don't even live in the city anymore, Chicago and actually around the world, I still stay in touch with. They're still very, very, very close friends. So a lot of great memories over there.
Yeah.
And we chose Cardinal Church because I didn't want to go to a school that had a lot of distractions.
Right. Okay.
So I just wanted to get my degree.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not just saying, like, I'm never the smartest person in the room. And so, I took it very seriously, actually did well, got good grades at Cardinal Church and finished, but it's not easy for me.
Yeah. And so when you were finished with school, did you immediately go in? Because, you've got an interesting career today as a restaurateur and somebody that's really involved in our community. Mm-hmm. What did you go into right out of school?
I actually worked for my friend's company that sold windows, roofing, and siding. And so I just became a salesman. And it just kind of was like, hey, do you want a job out of college? And I'm like, all right, give it a shot. And did really well.
Yeah.
I started selling, I think, top salesman. He made me vice president within a year, like selling a lot. But the problem is, not to talk bad about him, but we started making a lot of money. And then he wasn't paying some of the contractors. And he was going out and buying a nice boat and living the life. And like, so I was like, listen, he's like, well, I want you to take over the company. And I'm like, no, I'm going to have to move on to something else and work for a company then called Genuity, which was backed by Verizon, one of the largest 5 ISPs in the country at the time, in the world, and did sales for them and killed it. Did really well, really well sales wise. And, but then, Verizon backed out for some reason. Level 3 Communications bought them out and they said, hey, do you want to move to Denver or we'll give you a severance? And I took the severance.
And it was Genuity, is that a locally owned, privately held business before it was purchased or before they got involved? Okay. Yeah. So do you feel like that's, because it sounds like the first company you were working for, entrepreneurship is part of it, right? You've got a buddy that is running a company and you're kind of learning what to do, but it sounds like what not to do. There, same deal with Genuity and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I learned a lot about sales. Like, I didn't know. Like, I was probably the least equipped to know about windows, roof, and siding. I learned the product set pretty fast, but going into people's houses and just listening to them. And one day I listened to a guy play piano for an hour, and I sold me his entire house, roof, siding, windows. It's just, if you know how to really get along with people and get them to like you, they're going to buy from you. So,
oh heck yeah. I know there's a great. I know Mark Cuban. I don't know what you think, Mark Cuban. But Mark Cuban quote about.
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, he is, and I sense that he went to my alma mater, but his whole thing is, look, selling is not selling; it's helping. And if you can figure out a way to help, you're in. Like
100%.
Everybody wins, right? In that case, yeah.
I didn't want to do it for a living, though. I mean, I was making pretty good money at the time, but I sit there and listen to someone play piano for an hour to sell them, their entire. No, it just wasn't for me. Yeah.
So it sounds like you took a severance, which was probably a great call.
Yeah.
And is that when you decided to take a flyer and get into business in the restaurant game?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about that.
An opportunity had come up, and my uncle had, so my mom's sister said she needed to establish her e-visa. And so he said, we need to open up a business. And I said, well, I worked in restaurants in California. Why don't we open a restaurant? Her cooking is unbelievable. Korean. And so nice. I knew I couldn't take a shot on just doing Korean. So we made it a fusion called Sakatumi, sushi, Korean, kind of just a true fusion restaurant.
Yeah.
Traveled a lot, learned about it, went to Chicago a lot, went to a lot of those restaurants, took my sushi chefs there. Went to New York, went to all these restaurants, and I found a Chilean sea bass recipe. And I was like, oh my God, I have to have this. Did I tell you the story?
You didn't. No.
Yeah. And so it's like, so then I go to the waitress. I'm like, hey, can you give me that recipe? She goes, I can't do that. I go,
you did tell me this story.
Give you $100?
Yes.
And she's like, I can't do it. And so I went back to my hotel that night and with my wife, and I'm like calling there, like, my wife is really sick. I need to know everything that's in that.
That's right.
Never could make it quite the same as they made it, though, to tell you the truth. We didn't have the portions. We didn't have the so yeah.
So one of the things that I know prior to this discussion, I feel like, for one, I used to eat at Sakatumi all the time. I loved it. It was incredible. It was really very good. Just sad that it's not around anymore, but that game, the restaurant game, for most human beings is insanely challenging, right? I mean, there's just like it's hard to even imagine how hard every day just grinding through it. But you've made a great living doing it. What do you think is, well, for one, talk to us about that industry.
I've failed a lot of restaurants.
Yeah.
I've opened and closed a lot of restaurants. I haven't made a great living off restaurants.
Okay. All right.
I mean, Carnevor does well, but that's the anomaly, and so, but I will tell you, it's not the easiest business, and it's not a business that you really want to get into unless you really love it.
Right.
Or if you're a chef and that's the passion, but don't go into it for money.
Right. It's more of a labor of love.
It's a labor of love. Yeah. But I will tell you, I mean, when you have the hottest steakhouse for 16 years, you can meet the who's who of the country.
Right. Because everyone that comes here is coming to your place pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was actually curious about when you decided, hey, we're going to open this restaurant, and you were like, we went to Chicago, we looked at a bunch of places, we went to New York, did all of that. Like when you decided to make it, was your internal messaging be like, well, maybe I don't know how to do it, so I want to go try to find out how to do it right? And like that was part of the project plan to like, I got to go learn all of these things? Or was it like, no, let's just open it and figure out as we go?
Well, it was kind of both, to tell you the truth. But I mean, we traveled quite a bit, and one restaurant in particular. And just, I loved the way that they took care of the customer. I loved their food. I loved their flow. I mean, everything about them. And so everything is a borrowed idea.
Sure.
Almost everything. Right. And so it just, you learn a lot when you go and you look at some of the greater operators and in our business and things like that. So,
Are there places in the Midwest? So this is a Midwest focus, but, and the fact that, you came back from one of the great coastal and global cities in LA, and, you can probably make your own judgment calls about LA or New York and some of these other places. But what about the Midwest is a good location for a restaurateur, and where do you think people are doing it right?
Oh, I think there's a lot of restaurants that are doing it right here. I mean, if you look at Deptola, who just retired her top 30. I mean, there are some really talented people, talented chefs, and talented restaurant groups. We're not short of restaurants, I'll tell you that.
No.
This city is a sleeper city when it comes to restaurants.
I agree. So,
yeah, everyone in 5th Ward, 3rd Ward, downtown. I mean, some in the suburbs, but yeah.
Yeah. And Chicago, I mean, where does that rank for you in terms of the types of quality of food, but also just the cachet that some of these restaurants have? Or do they hit the upper echelon?
Chicago's a mecca of restaurants, for sure. Right? I mean, it's one of the, I think, top 10 cities in the world, maybe in the country for restaurants. Our business is getting harder, though. It's harder to find people to work. You have to pay them a lot to keep them in the kitchen. You're constantly short. The price of food is insane right now. So it's not an easy time to operate a restaurant coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people's PPP and ERC credits are running out. So I'm surprised you haven't seen more closed, just to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back to the Cardinal Stritch thing. I mean, different problem, but not really. I mean, it's a similar problem. What are the big changes? I know a lot of the favorites that my wife and family and I have visited restaurant wise are, they've adjusted their schedule, or they've wildly limited menus, or they're closing. And, it's kind of, what do you see kind of in the future for restaurants? Not just here, just in general.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you take a look at like fast casual, fast food, I think you're going to start to see more screens that replace people, because I mean, through the pandemic, even up to a year ago, I've seen McDonald's where they're like, hey, we're closed today. We don't have enough employees. I mean, that's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
When would you ever think of it? And then you have signs throughout the suburbs and other restaurants saying, hey, please be patient with us. We're very short-staffed. We don't have enough people in the kitchen. Like, it's a problem, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, the recession coming, layoffs coming, right? Hopefully our industry has a little more influx of people wanting to work. But look, you have this pandemic and you give people time off. They have weekends off, right? And so you're not working in a kitchen that's 100 and some degrees till late at night, and you reflect on your life, and it's a grind. You have to love our business.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you sense that? Well, I mean, in terms of the types of people that you can attract, is that changing daily as well, or do you think that's gonna flip flop and come back as some of these dollars that people have been getting over the pandemic years are waning? I mean, do you think that's going to flip again? And
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so. I think there's still a large influx of dollars going out, though. Yeah, more so than people think. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So when do you're in the business, you said you've started a variety of different restaurants, some worked, some failed. When do you start stretching out into other areas of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have. I only have one restaurant now, only Carnevor.
Yeah.
I sold out about 6 months before the pandemic. I sold out of my group.
Okay.
Yeah. And so just have Carnevor. And so different types of businesses from consulting, development, real estate.
Were those just opportunistic, or were those things that are like, I'm really interested in this area, I want to try to like get involved?
For which one?
Just, I mean, any of it.
Yeah, it's all kind of happened organically. I mean, for me, the restaurant businesses, I don't have the greatest food knowledge as some of the chefs here in this market, right? I think when it comes to hospitality and taking care of the customer, I think we do it best. I think we're the best at taking care of people because it's a true passion. And just for me, the passion is people. And so from that, I always knew that I needed to branch off. The goal was never just restaurants for me. I always wanted to do and be something more than that. Not to say that that's not great for some, right?
Yeah.
And so everything just kind of happened organically, right? I mean, it's from the consulting side, it's like, okay, well, I've helped my friend here with a pre-stressed concrete company connect him into this business, and he made a $20 million deal on it, and he would send me a gift card. And I'm like, oh. So after so many years, I'm like, well, hold on a second.
$20 million bucks for a gift card? Dude.
Like, hold on a second here. Like,
maybe a Tesla for that.
Right.
Gift card to Carnevor.
Right. And half the time you don't get anything but a thanks, right? Or I'll take you to dinner. But so now it's like, listen, I have a consulting company of 6 clients and very minimal on what I charge monthly. I always going to charge something monthly because it's the Rolodex, right? And it's my time and it's what else. But it's minimal compared to other consulting firms.
Right.
Minimal. But what I do structure is, look, if I win or we win, just pay me on the back end.
Yeah.
And so, and haven't lost yet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so that's really what it is. And it's just connecting, right? And then from that point on, working it to a close.
It's funny. I wrote down connector because I had a guess, which is my guess is your consulting business is, look, I can introduce you to the people that I've been able to meet and build great relationships with. And now I'm just becoming a connector for you, which is massively valuable to most of these companies. Right. But I wanted to just sort of establish because where you got that gene and, like in the restaurant game, you're still involved quite a lot. Right. What's your role?
Not really operations though.
Well, but if you're in the restaurant, let's just say that.
I still am in there almost every day.
And so what are you doing?
So for me,
what would you say the big, like, this is why I'm valuable here?
Oh, for the restaurant, well, people want to see me, right?
Right,
A lot of my friends are customers on every day. There's table.
They're asking for you to come out and shake your hand.
I send at least 30% of the dining room per day.
Yeah.
Like through my phone and texting people. But that's, I raise money out of there too. Do my consulting companies take me there to dinner.
Yeah.
So I should have my own steak night, but I don't. And that's just where everything happens now. Everything happens at Carnevor. I don't want to say everything, but a lot happens at Carnevor.
But your role there, I mean, it feels like you've kind of transitioned from, okay, I'm operating this thing, I'm making sure I'm coordinating, you've grown out of that. But now you're utilizing maybe this space that now is attracting people that are important to make sure you're connecting with, right? Is that kind of the role?
Yeah, that's the role. But it's also, for me, my role is growing the top line. So everywhere I go, I'm promoting Carnevor, right? And encouraging people to come there. And listen, I mean, if certain people that I know can bring a lot of value to Carnevor, I'll take care of their first meal because I know that we bet almost 1,000% that like nobody ever walks out of there and says this wasn't worth it. It's pretty arrogant to say that, but it's true. Like if you've ever eaten there and experienced it. And so that's why a lot of the people, it's like, oh, I haven't had this CEO in or this person that knows a ton of people. They can send a lot of business. It's just kind of become, my way of growing the top line.
Yeah.
And representing it, in anything that we do and everything that we do.
And you're good at it, right? I mean, obviously it's part of your DNA. It seems like connecting people is an interest. What are the other skills you think like that you feel like, look, part of what makes you successful? It could be about your background. It could just be like, look, I just like doing this type of thing. Mm-hmm. Are there other things that you're trying to bring to the table that you think other people need to learn how to do?
I mean, my true skill set is people, and it's really being able to bond with people. And honestly, I mean, I think that so many more people are capable of it than they think. But it's a lot of work. I mean, building your network is ongoing work, more work than anyone can imagine when you have a massive network.
Yeah.
It's constant work.
Yeah.
I'm literally connected to my hip is my phone, vacation, whatever it is. I mean, I am constantly on my phone.
Yeah.
And constantly trying to help people and constantly trying to help my friends and vice versa.
Right. Exactly. I think it's a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? Where you feel like, some people look at networking. I mean, we're in a business where networking means something real shallow. And it's like, look, if that's what it means to you, you're doing it wrong, because networking is more like, hey, build friendships. And when you hear of something that you think you could match people up and solve a problem, I mean, it's like, it makes all the sense in the world, right? It makes you feel good, but it also helps other people. I think it's a good point.
It's the most powerful thing in the world to me. I mean, I literally think it's the most powerful, and I hate using networking, but like, that's what people understand it to be. It's really just making friends in all different types of places, right? And so when I started my career, I remember finishing that year one, and I had 2,000 like business cards sitting on my desk, and I was like, wow, I don't know any of these people, right? And you go to all these events, you collect these business cards, and then I realized like I have to build my empire one at a time. One customer, one friend at a time. And then you really figure out how you get through, right? And so how you build a real friendship and how you help somebody. And when you do things for people and make them feel a certain way, and you can do that across the board through multiple sectors, it is the most powerful thing you will ever imagine. When I even go explain to the kids in middle school and high school, it's like, you should start building your network now. You take that kid that's awkward, right? That's being picked on, and you bring him into your group and you show him love. He might have offed himself that night. You could have saved his life, but now you've got a friend for life that is like, will do anything for you, right? It's so powerful that in modern day today, like those are the types of friends I want. I want to be able to go out there and help as many people as I can on a deeper level and connect with them from a very emotional standpoint. And you get a network that just makes you feel so secure about everything. Yeah.
I would imagine it can be addictive. I mean, right. I mean, part of sorry, we're getting real philosophically deep here, but it does feel like sometimes like, look, the more you do for other people, that's where you find the meaning in all of it.
100%.
And it's like, if you're doing those things and you're paying attention and you're asking good questions and listening and all that, you can make a real relationship and help. That's where I feel like, and it does strike me as that even in our last conversation, that sort of motivates you and drives you, right?
Just two stories that I have. And one of them, like I get emotional every time I talk about it, but I remember eating at Old Country Buffet with my son. He was like 7 years old, 8 years old. And I saw this big guy like looking at me, constantly looking at me. And I'm like, did I take him out when I was a bouncer or something like that? So I kept looking at him, and he finally approached the table and he said, "Is your name Omar?" And I stood up and I took one step back and I said, "Yeah, my name's Omar. What's up?" And he goes, you did restaurants, right? And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't." I said, "But I'm having lunch with my son. What can I do for you?" Right? And he said, I walked by, I was kicked out of my house at that time. I lost custody of my daughter. And he goes, "You had me lay bricks and you paid me cash." And I did that for 3 months, and you always paid me well, and you would buy me lunch and things like that. And I thought, I think I remember you. I think I remember that. He started crying and he said, because of that, I got back on my feet. Yeah. Got custody of my daughter, moved back in with her. And he goes, "My life was back on track. I have a job now." Bawling. I start bawling. He starts bawling. My son's right there. Like, greatest feeling in the world. Cool. In the world.
That's incredible.
I would take that over winning a lottery any day. I really would. Like I get emotional talking about it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think those things, it's tough I have kids, and I know we have kids similar ages. I've got a son going off to college and in high school, and then a grade school daughter. And it's interesting because you're trying to talk to them about the things that are important. Oftentimes it's like, well, look, do well in school, all that, right? That sort of like that's just showing up. But if you really want to have a life it's important and feels right, you do have to put energy and time into other people.
100%.
And if you don't, and you're just out trying to chase the gold ring or brass ring, I should say, but if you're just doing that, you're going to be unhappy and hollow 100%. And miserable. You're going to be 100%. Miserable. So,
and I've been teaching them on a deeper level. I mean, they laugh at me because I put quotes up on the board every day and have them read these quotes. Right? Yeah. So they go to school and everything like that. But really from a deeper level, it's like, it's our motto or our families always stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves. Like our motto is to always help those. And sometimes those kids, they're going through really, really, really bad things at school. So they lash out and my kids think they're terrible people, but I'm just explaining to them that something bad might be happening at home. Yeah. Let's understand that as adults, we need to remember that too, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you take them in? Why don't we befriend them? Why don't we do something really nice, show them love, right? And you could just save their life. But they will remember you and think of you in the highest of lights, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you were there for them, and it's so powerful. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I have a funny story. Like, I remember the governor asked me to be on his board early on in my career. And I'm like, oh, my God, the governor, I was going crazy and this and that. And, so I remember going, I was like, had a suit on. I was there an hour early. So I was the idiot that's there an hour early. And the crew, like, that's doing the catering was starting it all up. And I'm like, I've got 1,000 business cards in my pocket. I'm going to meet all these important people. This is incredible, this and that. And so one of the catering kids came over to me. He was like, hey, your name is Omar, Mr. Omar. Can I get you a beer or something? I said, no, I'm not drinking. I'm kind of nervous, this and that. Yeah, he goes, well, you have to be important. Like, you're here. And I'm like, actually, I'm not. I just owned a restaurant. And so we start talking, you start bonding. And every 10 minutes you'd come by me. He's like, hey, Mr. Important Omar, do you need anything? And like, literally like made me feel comfortable, made me feel incredible. The point of the story is I don't remember anyone in that room at that day, but I still remember that kid.
That kid.
Yeah, the kid got through to me, and I gave him my card, and I said, listen, I'm connected. Not as connected as I am today, but I'm connected. If I can ever help you, I will help you in any way I can. That's the way he made me feel in one interaction, right? And so when I do all of my training for whatever business it is, I still talk about this kid.
That's awesome.
In one day, when interaction, literally 20-minute interaction. It's crazy. It's powerful.
That's a really clear thing.
Well, I need to say that there's a lot of parallels, I think, from, the 8 years you spent training, and kind of the mindset that you have, which is, it is a grind. Networking is a grind. Always being able to look at a situation and think of the positive intent takes intention. 100%. Because you don't always like want to feel like, God, I just don't want to be positive today. That takes practice. Like in my house with my son, like, how do you get better at anything? You got to practice it. Well, it's not just practicing physical things. You got to practice being kinder to people. You got to practice listening a little bit better. It sounds like you've done an incredible job of taking this ability to master the grind, but you've put enough effort and time into it that that with the intention that you have, that it pays off. And it just kind of like is a continuing
virtuous cycle.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
that sounds really cool.
So when you flipped in, so maybe let's fast forward a little to, I know your passion now, which is really being inside of this community, right? We're in a region that needs to grow and continue to think about things that way.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. I mean, how did you, it sounds like the governor's asking you to be on councils for him to, guide them as a business owner. Was that the first time you got involved and did that parlay into something else, or how did you kind of get into that world?
That was kind of my world into politics, right? Yeah. So it's like, but I have a partner on the consulting side. He has his own lobby firm. He really was my introduction into a lot of politicians. And so, because as a lobbyist, that's what they do.
Yep.
And so I didn't really know anyone prior to him, but he really got me into the world and very well respected in that world. And so that's how I was able to make a lot of friendships. And I made real friendships on both sides.
Yeah. And I know him a little bit as well through business relationships. Would you say the way he thinks, in a lobbyist role, I would assume it's very similar, right?
It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. No. I mean, he very competitive too. And I love his approach. He's one of the greatest strategists that I know.
Yeah.
And so, it's usually about 8 guys I'll bounce things off of from different perspectives when I'm dug myself in a hole.
Yeah.
And I get everybody's perspective and then I kind of move forward with the consensus or, my version of what, I could come up with.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of your kitchen cabinet, right? The people that are there late at night when you're like, I need advice because this is now a real decision versus some of these other decisions are like, let's give it a shot, and for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten myself in a position that I think that if I say something really stupid in the public eye, I mean, in 30 seconds, my career could be over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just I have to be very measured these days with what I say and how I think and how I do it. Right.
You do strike me as the guy that says speaks your mind. I mean, you're an honest guy. How do you balance?
I'm very direct. Yes.
How do you balance being super direct and knowing how to be stoic when you need to be and all that sort of thing?
I mean, it's a skill set that you learn to be measured over time. I've made mistakes, right? But
right.
It comes natural to me.
Okay.
But I can still speak from the heart and be authentic. In almost everything I do.
Yeah. It's funny. We're talking, this is a podcast about executive stories, right? It's, how did you learn the skill set? What should you be talking with, other, leaders that are younger and maybe in their career? And how do you build your way up to this? And, this idea of knowing when to say, knowing how to show up essentially.
Yeah.
The words you use are often, they just make a big wake. I guess is the way we say it.
Right.
Did you have somebody in your life that you kind of drafted off of and learned that from?
My father. I mean, he was one of the most ethical humans I've ever known in my life. And, and he lived it, and he lived by example. I think, for me, I've been good to people. I don't think there's anyone out there that can say that I've duped them or screwed them over. And I think that I've walked the walk, and I've been good to people. And when I say that I'm going to do it, I do it no matter what, every time. Right. And so over time you develop a trust in a lot of people that say, hey, he's a good guy. Right. And so for me, money's one thing, but like for me to go to a Bucks game and people constantly telling my kids how great their dad and mom is, like, that's like,
that feels good.
Excites me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think just over time, and I didn't have a design to become this community leader. Like that was never in my plans, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was a little awkward because I went out to Arizona on a political convention, and then I was on a podcast, or not a podcast. I was on a panel with the mayor and Pat Connington. And so they kept asking, well, Omar, you're the face of the city. What do you think of this? And I said, don't say that when I'm sitting next to the mayor. Like, here's the face of the city. And they're like, well, he's new. But Omar, you've been doing this for this long. It was humbling, but it was a little awkward too. So
how funny. Well, so let's because you're the face of the city. No, because you really,
in a sense, I've become the unofficial spokesperson for a lot of things in the city.
There's like many things.
I get the call for every, So
exactly. Like, I see you showing up a lot more these days, especially when it comes to things that are happening just in our region. I think that's
thank you.
It's clear, right? So, let's talk about some of that stuff. I know the Third Street Market stuff that you've been involved, built from the ground up. There's a whole litany of things. I know you've been on the VISIT Milwaukee.
I was the chairman for 7 years.
For 7 years.
Yep.
And helped sort of broker in some of these big, enormous improvements to our convention. By the way, we work for a company that has their name on that now. That was a massive deal for the convention center. Oh, that was such
kudos to Baird too.
And wow. Baird,
Oh, you work for Baird as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Great company.
Very excited as a brand, as an organization, but also as a resident. I mean, I think it's doubling that space and being able to bring very different types of conventions to this city, I think is just a no-brainer.
I mean, to me, I'm not sure how you quantify that spend, but it shows the commitment that Baird has, a commitment to this community tenfold.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. They have doubled down and they put their money where their mouth is, and they care about this community.
Yeah.
Because that convention center is now, when we're going to do a $460 million completion of it. And by the way, I hired on Buddy from the firm, Steve Boss from MMAC. MMAC played a big role in it. And we just put together a good team on a 2-year path to get moral obligation from the state, which is $21.5 million. Specifically, Robin Voss and Jeff Fitzgerald at the time. And they were able to bond out for this convention center. So what does that mean? It means that we're going to be able to bring hundreds of thousands of more visitors to the city every year that are going to pay for our infrastructure. It's a no-brainer, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. New political leadership. New leadership here in the city, but you still have your powerhouses like the John Slifskys of NM who care a lot about the community. You have your Gail Klappas who literally, been in a few meetings with them recently, like really care about this community. And then you got, a lot of people want to say things about the Bucks, right? The Bucks have been I think that return on the dollar has been really good for our community. It's been incredible. Cow. And it's led by Peter Fagan. I have a lot of respect for him. I learned from him and saw the path that he did for the Fiserv Forum and to bring the Bucks here. And man, what it means for this community.
And what a ride it's been. I mean, just the moves that they've made, I think the decisions that they've made, personnel aside, because obviously we all know about that, but just the Deer District and how to build the area around what they're doing and how to contribute. I just feel like it's been like a master stroke for how to do this right in a city.
100%. I mean, they came into this community and they made their way around the community faster than I've ever seen, and they had friends in high places all over the place. But I mean, listen, it's been incredible for Milwaukee.
Yeah,
I'm generally convinced that most people agree on most things. Yet the conversation is usually focused on the things that we disagree with. Versus like what we actually agree with. And it sounds like some of the stuff that you're talking about, especially around investment in a community, investment in infrastructure, is getting people to agree. Like 90% of the people would be like, well, yeah, investing in those things would matter, instead of taking an immediate stance on why you shouldn't do it. And it feels like the reasons why you shouldn't do it are more about personal personal visibility versus like collaborating with the whole.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, can we talk Brewers a little bit?
Oh, for sure.
I formed a statewide coalition for that, and have some leaders in Milwaukee, but leaders from all across the state. And our job is to work a bipartisan solution, right? To getting this done. We're going to need state participation, and it involves taxpayer dollars. Not going to reinstate the 5-county tax or anything like that, but I mean, there's room. There needs to be improvements done. The money needs to be, come from the state in order to keep the Brewers here beyond 2030. And so the Brewers, again, another return on investment. I mean, since they're in AmFam Field, I'm pretty sure it was about $2.5 billion of economic impact, direct and indirect spending.
Yeah,
and it's also cheaper to keep them. The amount of tax that's generated from the jock tax to the sales tax. Everything that a lot of that goes out into the outskirts of Wisconsin, right? Doesn't come back into Milwaukee. So, if you're talking to one of the state senators, or talking to people well outside of Milwaukee and Manitowoc, wherever they are, they need to understand that tons of people from their community go to Brewers games, and then stay here in the hotels because they're 5-day series, and spend money in the restaurants, spend money on transportation. And it's also those bars all across Wisconsin that are playing the Brewers games that people go to watch and spend money into the bars. So they are the fabric of our community. And if we were to lose them, it would be catastrophic in so many ways.
The every way you measure the impact of a major sports franchise on a city or a region like this, it feels like it shouldn't even be a discussion. Why is it such a discussion, or is it just it's now a thing where, look, we just have to rally the 90% that probably agree and get their voices to be heard so that we're ready. Yeah,
everybody has different reasons. I mean, since I've started it, people will call my personal website and my email and give me their opinions on a lot of things. I think most people realize, like, if we were to lose a major league team in Milwaukee, it would be catastrophic. And so, I've met people from all across Wisconsin on a regular basis in our places. I've met people from across the country that travel for these games too. So it's incredible. I think we've got a special team this year too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's looking like just everything seems to be looking up.
100%. Yeah.
For the Brewers. And I'm excited. It's funny. We talk about what used to be Miller Park, now is AmFam Field. Doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it's been, I don't know, it's 22 years,
21 years,
21 years.
Yeah. And I can tell you, like, Mark Antanasio, I've gotten to know him. He's a friend, and Rick Schlesinger's a friend, and he's their president. And, they really want to be here. They want it to work. They love this community. Yeah. And that's special, because you don't really see that in a lot of other ownership groups for other types of sports. And they literally love this community. Mark has a place here. He spends a lot of time here. And so I think we should feel blessed that they really want to keep the team here.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you find yourself in the middle of all of these things? And like, that's what I mean, I know you have a network, but I mean, like, do you just have a backlog of items where you're like, all right, when I finish this one, this is the next thing I'm going at? Or is it kind of like somebody's like,
I think I take it on a case by case basis. And, I think things are going to start to heat up with the RNC. And so I'm on the host committee there and going to be working quite a bit with that. And so for me, I pick and choose what I take on. I mean, I think I could have 100 consulting clients. I stopped at 6 because I just want to be effective and I want to win. I don't ever want to lose because you're only as good as your last win or loss, right? Yeah. But this one, Mark's a friend and Rick's a friend, and I've been a lifelong Brewer fan. And listen, my parents used to dress me up, and we used to go to Brewers games, and those are the types of things that shape families. And so it's I knew I really wanted to take on something like that, form this coalition, so that the next generation of families can enjoy this. And so I never signed up to be this community leader. It just happened. I can't tell you how it happened. And there's times where I'm like, I go back home and I'm like, God, I just want to run my businesses and not have to stand up for this or that. Right. And so, I mean, I'll be honest, I have a lot of those days, but I don't know how I got myself in this position, but I'm in it. And, when it comes to something like that, that's so important to keep the brewers here. I know I've developed quite a bit of influence. And so I know I'm dangerous to a lot of people, but I also can be an ally. So I think that's why sometimes people want to push me out to the front to get things done. Right?
Yeah. Things seem to get done.
Is there a difference in the mindset of like when you're running a restaurant, which I have little knowledge into the industry, but it seems very kind of like day to day, lots of things that are moving and going. And then you're into some sort of event like, hey, we're going to like work with the brewers to try to stay in Milwaukee. That seems like a very long-term like deal. Like, is there a difference in the way that you approach something that like requires you to be more day-to-day active versus something like, I got 3 things in flight, but those things could be 2 to 3 years apiece?
Yeah, I prioritize like anything, but Carnevor is sort of running itself at this point. And so I have an incredible team. Mark Heminger is my manager, their GM. He's unbelievable. And so I get out of his way. But again, I mean, what I do is I just try to grow the top line. I do a lot of research too, because I don't sleep a lot. And so, I'm always coming up with new ideas to push us to the edge at Carnevor and coming up with different ideas to do things. I think I was the first one ever to come up with nachos at a high-end steakhouse. But they're also, it's like a 10-year aged Hook's cheddar. We make our own guacamole creme fraiche. We use Japanese Wagyu on them. So it was a $55 nacho plate. It was my idea. And sometimes my chefs look at me like I'm nuts, but we sold out every night.
Yeah.
And so, the creative side, I still enjoy that. And the food hall, I hire for my holes where I'm not great at. And so I have a great GM there named Eric Kay and Jamie, who's worked for me for many projects. They're really deep into operations. For me, it's hard for me I don't want to really deal with too many employees anymore. Deep into the operations, it's tough.
Sure.
And so I've done it for so long that I know there's people that are great at it and I let them do it and I support them.
Yeah.
How do you organize your day?
I take it day by day. I don't know. This morning I woke up at 4:15 and I will tell you, I get more sleep than you guys. I don't know how much you guys sleep, but I bet you it's not 7 hours a day.
I actually do.
I don't sleep that. I don't sleep that, not because I don't want to, but because I just wake up tossing and turning, like you said, at 4 o'clock. And I'm like, I can't stop thinking about things. And so, but yeah, sleeping, I think, is one of those life hacks where if you can figure that one out, you can be productive the rest of the time.
Oh my gosh.
My wife's a professional sleeper. She sleeps better than anybody I've ever met in my life. And the older I got, the more bored I was being up by myself. So then I started working out really early, which then made me go to bed early. So now I generally get like 7 hours.
You've got the formula down. Huh?
Well, but it's
great.
learned.
Get your blood flowing. Right. I mean, you're supposed to do your workworkouts in the morning.
Yeah. Makes my coffee taste better.
But before the pandemic, I mean, I was sleeping between 4 and 5 hours a day. And there's still days where I do that because I have to. And then if I do that 2-3 days in a row, I'll go down for 10 hours on a Sunday. Yeah. But my emotional intelligence, my mom has Alzheimer's. I've made it a point to get at least 6, if not 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours of sleep. Probably not 8, but I function so much better.
Sure.
I've made my mistakes, especially with employees or people in the community, when I haven't slept enough.
Yeah. And you're not, well, the other thing is I talked just mental health. I think especially through the pandemic, when people everything changed, right? So you're at home and the routines are all different. And it became pretty clear, let's say 6 months in, if you don't develop a routine, and know and understand why you're doing it, you can get mentally disconnected from everything. And it's like, how do you stay active and make sure you're working out and all that and sleep? And it just seems like we all had to learn how to do that pretty quick there during the pandemic.
I think if you want to reach any level of success, you have to have a routine.
Yeah.
And you have to stick to it consistently.
Do you use, so maybe a little more into the nuts and bolts, but there's a lot of leadership structural ways you mentioned, hey, I hire for the holes. I love that because, look, you've got strengths, but where you don't. And it's like, that's the people you hire. And that's kind of the way I think leaders should be thinking. It's like, you can't do this as well as your team can. Yeah. So how do you just make sure they're set up for success? Do you have a philosophy or a structure or an approach or a model that you tend to lean into?
Yeah, I will say that I thought I did until I met my partner, Josh Krisnak, and he's from Hempel. And so we're 50-50 on the food hall. And he owns all the real estate. I'm just a tiny part of it. But, he's taught me a lot, taught me a lot about how he structures things. The process, it's really the process of how he does things.
Yep.
And so he's always bringing new leadership tools and structures and systems. So we're using something now called 90. I can't remember what it is. And so, he has so many, I think he told me he has 180 K1s, okay. And so, you've got to just be ultra organized and structured.
Right.
And so the more I do, the more, I've certainly learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
A lot of us in the restaurant background, people in restaurants don't even answer emails.
Oh,
it's like they get so buried into the world. It's like, I'm doing this charity event. I got them the money. Like, can I have a menu for the 17th time? Can you tell me your menu? The event is 2 days from now. I've got to go to print with restaurateurs are different breeds.
Yeah. Well, I know some of it. I'm assuming I have a buddy who he works with, I'll call it small to medium business, but basically he is working with entrepreneurs and a lot of times family businesses. And frankly, with this generational transfer of wealth, the idea that, look, I've always thought I'm going to take this, overhead door business and I'm going to give it to my kids. and they're finding out what the kids don't want it or the kids suck at it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like talking to them about, look, you're spending 90 hours a week just bleeding for this business, but you're just pushing the paper around. Like, you got to kind of step back. You got to put a system in place. You got to figure out how to get out of the business in some sense. And
you've got to run the business. You can't have it run you.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
How much do you value like a learning mindset? Because it appears to me like in your position, having a high degree of confidence in yourself is a requirement. Mm-hmm. But it's almost ironic, or maybe like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the opposite of, but you also have to have a great level of humility in order to be able to like learn from the failures. Yeah. Like how do you kind of like reconcile those two things? A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, so for me, I mean, and I just, we live in a world in a very funny time right now. And so like at one point I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm betting 99% of people love me. And then you become this community leader that you didn't sign up for. And all of a sudden you're taking on things and you're taking a stance and you're doing what you believe in. But everything I believe in, everything that I stand up for is what I believe in my heart, that I'm doing the right thing. Right. And so knowing that mindset, but I always feel like it's like, I always say you start with 100 chits in your body of confidence, right? And then you go into the world and people are just taking those chits from you, right? So by the time you get home, you've got to reset it and put all those chits back in yourself, right? Because they are pulling them from you from multiple directions all the time.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's like having, like you said, the learning part of it is having mentors. I still have people that I go to in my life that I call when I'm in the hole, when I'm in the dark, that will be there for me, right? And so I think we all kind of, when you develop a network, you kind of all do that for one another. But humility is important too. I mean, I am very confident within myself and like sometimes surprise myself because I haven't really lost yet, right? And so, but I think it's not power. A lot of people look at power as like men with huge muscles. Power is like being able to get along with everybody around you, right? And being able to go to them. And it's just such a simple concept that some people don't understand. It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm going to talk to you a certain way and just, if I need something from you, right? My whole goal is, let me do something for you first before I ask it for you. But if I don't, I'm not going to assault you and try to overpower you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's more
doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Sometimes it does, but only up to a certain point.
Right.
Only up to a certain point.
It works once because the second time is you're done. I feel like some of the ideas just, it's more like, it's not, you use the term power, am I someone who goes in and just directs traffic and makes sure everyone does what I say they do? It's like the opposite of that. I mean, there's some sense it's how do you display competence and
that's right.
clarity about what you want and then figure out how to help other people. I think that those
that's
types
right.
of things are pretty universal, and it feels like that's alive and well sort of in your philosophy here.
Totally. You know, and the path is never easy. Like the convention center, people are like, why would you take that project on? I became chairman of VISIT. I ended up firing half the management team and the CEO, who was kind of a friend, but then we did a national search, rebuilt VISIT, brought Peggy, who's phenomenal. Then we had to do the Wisconsin Center District. And again, you're making enemies along the way because you're firing people, right? You're kind of clearing some dead wood in certain areas, and hate to say it that way, but that's what it is, right? Yeah. And then you're bringing real leaders in and you're building the team around them before you can hit that go button. And so like with the convention center, it was working a path of just being able to get along with the people in the power, right? Mm-hmm. And then it would die a few times, and then you'd go home and you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. Why would I take this on? You just alternately work a different path. And then, right, you show, you can't just be nice to people, right? Well, we have to provide them all the data, and we have to show them all the employment statistics everything, right? And so if you can competently, I like the word I use, competent, work the path, you can get a lot of things done.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was hard, but why it sat stagnant for 20 years, no other leader took that project on, is beyond me, but I'm glad it did, because it proved I could do that.
Right. Well, I mean, you mentioned firing is one of those where it's such a goofy thing, because it feels, I mean, it interpersonally, it's like, oh, this is horrible, like emotionally. But if you were to look back on this in 15 years and say, okay, what happened? What was the outcome? I think in some cases as a leader, it's like that would be an example of a place where you'd say, that's hard to do. Someone has to do it, because there's more than that one person failing, right? It's that person is creating failure at every level. There might be 25 other people that are suffering because of that, or the whole endeavor might be suffering. And it's like, well, I might not know how to fix it all, but I know what's not working, and how do you improve it? There's some really hard choices that have to happen there, right? For sure.
It was really bad. And so, it wasn't easy, but, you do what you have to do. And now look at the organization is thriving now. And Peggy has built a whole team, and they're crushing it. Put Marty Brooks in the convention center. We did the same thing. He's built a team. And now, before there was a lot of finger pointing going on with those organizations. Yeah, nothing was getting done. It was a catastrophe. I mean, but now they're actually getting along, and they're winning together, which is the whole city then wins.
So let me ask. So I've got a couple of more questions, and we'll and I know I just want to be cognizant of your time, but one of the things that I know, so there's a list, probably a giant list of things that you've been involved with, helped bring to fruition, the convention center, the 3rd Street Market, the Bucks, even, what happened with them, the Brewers thing that you're trying to work on.
Yeah.
So there's a list, right?
Yeah.
What do you think this region and city needs next? What's that thing in your head that you're saying, why isn't anyone talking about this?
I think we're heading in the right direction. I mean, if you take a look at Chevy and I shouldn't call him Chevy anymore, Mayor Cavalier, Mayor Johnson, and take a look at like David Crowley, the county executive over there. I mean, they're coming in with an open mind, and they listen, and they're friends, and they're good guys, and they're actually taking stances on things where, I'm sorry to say it, but Tom Barrett hurt this city for a long time. 17 years of not just not doing a whole lot, and I know that I'm going to offend a lot of people by saying that, but getting in the way of a lot of things as well. So Chevy, 1 year in there, I mean, you can't outdo 17 years of things that, like, he's done a lot of good things. He's working his butt off. But I have a lot of hope for him, and I have a lot of hope for Crowley, and they're actually meeting with Republicans, right? Not the easiest thing to negotiate with Republicans as a Dem, like whatnot, and vice versa, but they're actually meeting with them with an open mind, and I think that this is the shot that we'll get some things done. Before, when you insult the Republicans, they're in control of the state, and they've done a lot for the city that a lot of people won't recognize them for. Why would they do anything for us?
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's just so... It's so crazy to me that people just don't understand that, and so it's like, oh, hey, by the way, thanks for helping us get 5-star foreigner. That was done with Republican legislation, right?
Right.
Convention center. I mean, we can go on and on and on. And so,
I mean, I think one of the things that I know that I I probably would classify myself as typical. I might not be, but typical in that the interplay between political parties or philosophies or things like that is off-putting. Off-putting to the point of like, I just don't want to deal with that. I don't want to talk about it even sometimes. Like, okay, look, there's this story, story A, story B, and the truth is always different than both of those things.
Right.
How have you navigated that? I mean, obviously you have a perspective, but it's like, do you help navigate that? Is there something that
it's called being reasonable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like in understanding the game and not letting it get to you. Like there's going to be stories that come out where the Brewers deal dies 4 more times. Right. And so it's like, people don't understand is sometimes a legislator says something because they've got to answer to their caucus. Right. Mm-hmm. And so in a lot of the times it's, a Republican doing something just to make the governor look better, the governor doing something just to make the Republican look. It's just a game. It's a game. And so once you understand that and you're able to work with both sides and being reasonable, I truly, truly, truly believe that 80% of us are moderate and more down the middle. Like my personal beliefs, not to get political, but I don't think an 18-year-old should have access to a submachine gun. I don't think that, I think women should have the right to do with what they want to do with their bodies. I think most people will agree with that, but you always have your fringes that are controlling the narrative right now.
Talking points and some of the theater that goes on is pretty.
Because I'm centric and because I am, more down the middle, that's why I'm able to have the conversations on both sides. I understand both sides. I really do.
I like the concept of don't be right, be effective. And like if it seems like at least the voices on either of the sides are always just trying to be right by proving the other side wrong, while the rest of us are just waiting for
something to happen
that like is just going to move forward.
100%. But I will tell you that I really don't view myself as successful yet. I have a lot more goals that I have in mind, but I will tell you that I don't think, and I think if you know anyone that's close to me, I don't think I have an ego. And I think a lot of people, I do believe in myself. I sometimes I'm like, wow, like I formed this coalition to keep the Brewers team. Like it's pretty big stuff, right? But I don't have an ego. And so it's like I don't easily get offended, or I can take this insult and see if I can fix the relationship. I think ego gets in the way of so many things. And that's the problem with it. Yeah. A lot of these leaders that get power and get a lot of money, the egos get in the way of so many things. It's crazy.
There's a lot of personal challenges that I think end up influencing people's how they interact. I think that's a big challenge. So maybe that's a good way to end it. Maybe to talk a little bit about advice. I mean, advice for, and this could be advice for young people that are looking at ways to kind of navigate the world and the things that are most important, or it could be advice for leaders that are in our community and how they should be getting involved. I mean, what is your perspective in terms of the advice? And I know you've got some really key skill sets.
For me, I think it all happened because I was raised to help others, right? And that was always our family motto. That's how I'm raising my kids. Every event we do, they're volunteering. And, it goes back to the simple principle. Like, I think a lot of these charitable type initiatives that I do, the police officer that was just killed, I've developed a base of people. So when I send out a tweet, I'm able to get a lot of people to come and donate to that guy's family. There was a girl that was killed with domestic violence, which was Jose Perez's niece, actually, and I'm close to him. We did a fundraiser for him, and, I think we raised $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 at times. And so I actually really enjoy helping. It's helped me just find a fulfillment in my life, but it's really come back around. I don't look at it like, oh my gosh, I'm going to gain a lot of power or trust from others because of this, but I just continue to do it because it's inside of me, and it has paid dividends times 20.
Yeah.
And I just think that should be our mission. I mean, we've all done well. You guys work for Bear. You guys are really smart. I couldn't do what you guys do. I'll just tell you that right now. But I will tell you that I know you've done well, but it's like, how can we really reach others and help others? I mean, that's what life is about to me, man. It really is. And it's so, so powerful.
Yeah. With the learning I've done, I mean, obviously showing up with some humility and being willing to go on the journey, I think, as a way to sum it up here, putting people first and just figuring out ways to either help or connect, which is a form of helping, feels like kind of your your purpose, the thing that you're putting your time and attention to.
On a macro scale, but even on a micro scale, like, I mean, there's things that I don't put on the internet or don't go on TV for that I know it's a family that I've donated furniture or help. Like when they hold your hand and you see the tears and they're like, I feel like I'm walking on water. Like I can't even explain, like, and you guys have done it for, like, it's so powerful. If we can get everybody in that mindset, we would be in such a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you started the conversation by saying, like, it was a little awkward at family dinners because, your sister's a doctor, and you're like, and I'm a fighter. But when you guys get back together and have family dinners now, I would imagine you feel much more.
Yeah, no, I feel pretty good about myself. That's where awesome. I'm headed. I feel pretty good about my family and how we take. I feel pretty good about everything.
That's great. Well, hey man, I really do appreciate you coming back in and making the time. And I know
thanks for having me again.
It's great seeing you again, and definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely.